Hello students, this is Faizan Mirza. We are discussing types of immunity. Types of immunity can be active immunity or passive immunity. In active immunity, your body's own white blood cells are involved, wherein in passive immunity, your body's own white blood cells are not involved. In active immunity, your white blood cells get exposed to the antigen either naturally or artificially. In passive immunity, you receive somebody else's antibodies, again artificially or naturally. How do we distinguish active immunity and passive immunity? In active immunity, memory cells are made. In passive immunity, memory cells are not made. Active immunity is long lasting, passive immunity is not long lasting. Active immunity could either be natural or artificial. Natural could be because of an infection, and artificial could be because of being vaccinated. So natural infection occurs like this is something very natural to just get an infection, and you get a long lasting immunological memory against that disease. This is why your white blood cells, they participated to the antigen that entered in your body. Artificially, you get active immunity when you get vaccinated. Again, the memory cells are produced, but vaccination is an artificial process. This is not a natural mechanism. Although once you are vaccinated, again your body gets exposed to the antigen and memory cells are made and long lasting immunity can be achieved. Passive immunity could also be natural or artificial. Here you will receive the antibodies either naturally or artificially. When the antibodies are being received naturally, they pass on from the mother to the fetus through the placenta, or from the mother's milk to the baby through lactation. The mother's milk in the initial few days is after the delivery of the baby is having colostrum. Colostrum is a thick yellow fluid. It's rich in antibodies, and this is very beneficial for the baby. Artificial passive immunity is when the commercially prepared antibodies are injected into a person. For example, you can recall how the COVID survivors were being asked by the various agencies to donate their plasma for passive immunization. So this is passive immunization. You give a shot of the antibodies which are there in the lab to a person who's lacking that, so that the infection doesn't set in and the severity of the infection can be reverted. For example, rabies shot, tetanus shots, and the example that I've just given for regarding COVID. So natural infection, or the natural way of getting the immunity active, natural is the best. The infection is the best of all. You get immunity, which is the long lasting one. With vaccination, yes, some vaccines give you lifetime immunity upon single dose. Some needs multiple doses. In a baby's blood, the total antibodies can be seen here that they rise by the time of birth, and the total antibodies are completely the maternal antibody. After birth, the maternal antibody starts to decline and the total antibody also takes a dip, but the baby starts producing its own antibodies, so the antibody titer starts to return to normal. Again, this is the same thing. You can see that is the person getting infected, natural infection. This is artificial immunity because of the active immunity, but artificial, the person is getting vaccinated. Here, the baby is being fed on mother's milk. This is natural. The antibodies from the mother's breast milk are being passed on to the baby. Here, again, the person is being injected, but this is not the antigen being injected. Here, the antigen was being injected. Here, the antibodies are being injected to prevent the severity of the disease. What's vaccination? Vaccination basically is a vaccine containing antigens, and it gives basically the antigens in the vaccine. They are either injected or they are given by mouth, and the vaccination, it confers artificial active immunity. A vaccine basically is a preparation of surface antigen which mimics a natural course of infection. The immunological memory is evoked, and the plasma cells and the specific antibodies, the specific T cell, the memory cells of each are made. When the same antigen bearing the strain of the pathogen bearing the same antigen enters the body against which you have been vaccinated, the immune response clears this pathogen right away before the signs and symptoms could occur. Either you don't get the disease at all, or you get a very mild infection. Types of vaccine include live microorganism, where a harmless strain for the similar antigens is used, or a dead microorganism, which means the disease causing but already killed microorganism is added to the vaccine. An attenuated microorganism is the one which is alive but is disease causing but is made harmless by certain modification. Attenuated microorganism can be added to a vaccine as well. Another vaccine could be a preparation of surface antigens, where the epitopes, which are the antigens of the microorganism, they are added in a mixture, and that mixture is given as a vaccine. Preparation of toxins which are made harmless, toxoid, they also make up for a vaccine. When vaccination is being done, the route could either be oral or in vein or a muscle. Some vaccines are effective in a single dose, some required multiple doses, some required booster dose, and this needs extensive research and extensive research on animals and human trials as well to pass on a vaccine for whether it's fit for use on humans in general or not. Vaccination generally it confers immunity which is long lasting. What are there are some problem with vaccine? A person can give poor response. Why? Because the person might be deficient in proteins, and if there is a protein deficiency or the person is malnourished, the antibodies will not be made in good number, and the person's body will not respond very well to the vaccine. Then live virus and herd immunity. People who are vaccinated with the live virus actually they pass on this virus in the primary response. They pass it on in the feces, and this can infect others in the same locality. So it's a herd immunity is the main thing that is targeted here. What is herd immunity? When most people of a certain population are immune to a disease either by vaccination or by recovering from its infection, this provides an indirect protection to those who lack immunity against that disease. So in herd immunity, maximum households are vaccinated at the same time in the same age group, so that when they pass on the live pathogen to the environment, they don't end up infecting other people. Antigenic variation is also a challenge. There are hundred of different strains possible. For example, for the common cold, you can't get a vaccine for it made in such a way that it will protect you against all of the hundreds of the antigens. That's why a single vaccine for common cold is not available that gives lifelong immunity. Same for the influenza virus. So it mutates so regularly and it brings about changes. There can be changes which include antigenic drift, or there could be antigenic shift. An antigenic drift is a minor change in the antigens. Your memory cells can still recognize the pathogen as being the same that they have seen before, and a secondary immune response can be evoked. But in antigenic shift, there is a major change in the antigen structure, and the pathogen will just not be recognized by the body at all. Antigenic concealment is also a challenge. Some pathogens they hide inside the body. For example, the bacteria that causes TB, the tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Mycobacterium bovis, they both live inside the epithelial cells of the lungs. They get very well hidden from the white blood cells. Similarly, the HIV it hides inside the helper T cells, and then we have the Vibrio chlorides hiding in the intestine, the gut, the lumen of the gut. And then we have for example, these cells which, for example, the malarial plasmodium express so many antigens in so many lives in different parts of life cycle. For example, when it's coming out of the liver, it will have different set of antigen. When it's in the plasma, it will have different set of antigens. When it's in the red blood cell, it would again have different sets of antigen. And plus, it's a eukaryote, so it's almost impossible to make an affordable vaccine of malaria. Smallpox was a disease that was eradicated successfully by vaccination. So, what was smallpox? Smallpox was caused by a virus called variola virus. But when people would come in direct contact, red spots would start forming with a transparent fluid which would appear all over the body. They would soon fill with pus. Eyelids would become swollen, they would become glued together. Some people would just tear their flesh because of the itching, and some people would be completely disfigured by their scabs which are left by the pustules as they dried out, and some people were blinded by the disease, and some people died as well. So WHO they started the eradication program in 1956, and it was in 1967 it actually set the ball rolling. And actually what you can see that the idea was that in this span of from 1956 to 1967 they wanted to eradicate the disease altogether. 80% of people were vaccinated who were at high risk, and 30 households were actually were vaccinated at once. For this program was called as ring vaccination. So ring vaccination was carried out that a household which was vaccinated, 30 household and the relatives and the contacts in the area were also vaccinated. So rings were made, and this rings ensured that maximum people were vaccinated at the same time. Eradication was most difficult in Ethiopia and Somalia, where people were living in remote districts away from the developed roads and developed regions. So they were dirt tracks, and it was very difficult to just transport the vaccine. But anyhow, that was done. And in 70s, the countries they went to war, which made the program all the more difficult. But eventually, in 1977, the world was declared free. The last case was reported in 1980. The World Health Organization it declared that the smallpox had been eradicated. How eradication program succeeded? The variola virus, it did not mutate, it did not change its surface antigen, so the vaccine was cheap to produce, and there was no antigenic shift occurring, no antigenic drift occurring. The vaccine was a live vaccine made from harmless similar virus. This was a vaccinia, and this live virus vaccine is always the most effective. The vaccine was freeze dried and could be kept at high temperature as long as for 6 months. It had a high shelf life, a long shelf life. It could be distributed very well throughout the topics. The infected people were easy to identify, so you knew which people were to be vaccinated first, and the people who were infected and their family members and their relatives and the people who the person might have contacted. So they were easy to identify. A stainless steel needle, which was a bifurcated needle with two prongs, was used to push the vaccine into the skin. The smallpox virus did not linger in the body after the infection, so the body didn't become the reservoir of the infection. This virus was not infecting animals, so it was easy to break the transmission cycle. Since this just humans, which is a single host, was involved, you did not need to think about another host for this passing the disease, or a vector which could pass the disease to other individuals. These people, who were the youth at that time, 16 to 17 years old, they were the enthusiastic vaccinators who worked very well in ensuring that the vaccine program was a success. So far, this was the only disease that has been eradicated through vaccination is the smallpox. Probably the second disease that could get wiped out by vaccination would be polio, but then there are just two countries where polio is left, and Pakistan is one of them. Malaria, TB, HIV, cholera, we don't have effective vaccines against these, and there are various reasons for why the vaccine could not be made against these particular pathogens, or effective vaccines could not be made, or probably effective immune response could not be evoked against these particular vaccines. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.